Hello, everybody. My name is David Arluck. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. And I'm just going to wait for just another few minutes or a few seconds for more people to join the room and be able to participate with Brett, Gail, and I. I want to thank everybody for coming. Today we're going to be talking about sprinting and how a positive attitude affects performance. First, I would like to introduce my partner in crime, Brett Hawke. Brett was a competitive swimmer for Australia. He competed at the 2000 and 2004 Olympic Games. He swam for Auburn University under David Marsh. And soon after graduating, he took over that program as the head coach, where he led the Auburn Tigers for about 10 years in that position. Now he is the director of swim camps for Fitter and Faster. Perhaps most notably as a coach, he worked with Cesar Cielo as he prepared for the Olympic Games in 2008, where Cesar won the 50 freestyle Olympic gold medal. And Brett has been a coach at the Olympics for the past 3 Olympic Games. So in one way or another, Brett's been on deck at the past 5 Olympic Games. Look at that.
Still works out in quarantine. No.
Very nice. And he actually hung a TRX I sent him in his kitchen, so he can eat extra food and work out right there in the kitchen.
And drink coffee at the same time.
Very nice. So welcome, Brett. Thanks for joining.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And next, it's our pleasure to have my friend Gail Devers with us to talk about sprinting and how attitude affects performance. Gail is a 2-time Olympic champion in the 100-meter dash. She's the only the second person in history to accomplish that feat. She was the first time in 30 years when she did it in 1992 and 1996. She is a 10-time national champion for the United States of America. She was inducted into the U.S. Track and Field Hall of Fame in 2011. And in 2012, she actually was inducted into the United States Olympic Hall of Fame, along with 2 of my other very close friends, Jenny Thompson and Gary Hall Jr. So I was able to be there for that. And that was a very special time for all of them and something that I'll remember forever. So welcome to Gail.
Hello.
Hi, Gail.
Hey. Good to see you, Gail. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's awesome.
I'm going to say this. I'm a total fan because I missed the Olympic team for Australia in 1996 by 3/100ths of a second, and we're going to talk about the importance of hundreds of seconds in a minute. But I sat at home and it was hard to watch swimming, so I wanted to spend my time watching other sports, and I spent a lot of time watching you during those Olympics and cool. Your incredible performances. I was reading up on your famous nails. Can you give us the backstory on what's going on with your nails at the time?
Okay, so they're kind of long now.
Yeah.
And actually, this hand is not, because I was moving my Miss Pac-Man machine the other day, and two of my nails got caught under it. So I go when they break, they just go bald until they grow back. But basically, the story behind it is that I used to bite my nails. And my dad, who's a minister, made a bet with me. He said, okay, let's see. We'll grow our nails for a month and see whose nails are the longest, just one finger. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to let my dad walk around with one nail that's going to be crazy long. And so everything else that he tried didn't work. I mean, he was like hot sauce, whatever you put on nails, and it didn't work until he appealed to my competitive nature. And then once he did that, it kind of just worked out. And so I have Graves' disease, and I let my nail, it took them almost 3 years to diagnose me. So I let my nails grow for 3 years at a time, just as a mental boost for myself to let me know that I was okay. And so recently what I've done is that I'll let them grow for a year at a time, and then I'll cut them usually at the beginning of school year for kids. But when things, I've had a lot going on. My brother passed away, a lot of things that have happened. So when something significant happens in my life now, I'll cut one hand. Oh. And everybody knows if I'm cutting my nails, that's something's going on. So the last time I cut my nails, this hand was in November 16th, because I decided to embark on another venture. I went from sprinting to distance, and I trained for the half marathon for 3 months. So they're going back.
You lost your mind for a couple of months there.
Exactly. I went half crazy.
So when you grew your nails, didn't that affect your start? Did you have to?
I had to adjust the way I started. I started on my knuckles. And even now when I try to teach kids, it's just, I tell them, don't do what I do, because I still start on my knuckles, even when my nails are short, because it just doesn't feel right, because I was 25 years on my knuckles. So, and the thought process was, okay, you know what? My goal is to be the fastest starter in the world.
Wow. And
so were you the fastest starter in the world?
Yeah.
I was pretty much I was there.
Why isn't everybody starting on the knuckles?
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
They didn't know that. They don't have it's the nails. It's a mental thing, to be honest. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to let this be a deficit. I like my nails. I like to grow them. And so I feel like when you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, it gives you that energy to go out there and perform well. So I've got to turn what other people would assume is a negative into something that's really positive.
Oh, wow. Well, listen, you had an amazing career and a lot of highs, couple of lows, couple of disappointments, and we want to talk about some of those today. But something that obviously there's a lot of swimmers out there right now, and there's a lot of swim coaches listening right now. So one of the things that I spent 7 years as a professional athlete trying to gain was hundreds of seconds. I swam the 50 freestyle, which is the shortest event in the pool. So it's just you start at one end and you finish at the other. And my whole objective was to get down to the other end of the pool as fast as I could, just like you in the track. And so my mindset was, I wasn't trying to find 1 or 2 seconds. I was trying to find 1 or 2 tenths, or I was trying to find 5 100ths over that period of time. So I'm sure you were the same mindset. And that's really what intrigues me about this conversation is, what did you do as a track athlete that you focused on in order to get those hundreds of seconds?
Right. Well, like you said, I'm the same. I was the straight sprinter, I always say 105 meters, and I ran the 50 and 60 indoors. And so it's about, tenths of a second, thousandths of a second. A lot of my races came down to what I say an 8 head. Everybody else in the world has a 4 head. I have an 8 head. So I'm trying to get it across. And one of the reasons why I tell people I run 105 meters is because I want to go through the finish line and not to the finish line. And so I'm really concentrating on how can I be explosive, powerful, explosive, fast, all of those. It has to be an equation that when you add everything up, 2 + 2 + 2 is going to equal 6, not 4. Because if it equals 4, you did something wrong and you forgot a portion of that. I usually break my races up into zones. And at each zone, I'm looking to do something. In the beginning, when the gun goes off, my goal is to break inertia. And I want to be the first one to break inertia and then keep going. It's breaking it and going through it. So like you said, it is one of those things that you have to be explosive. Weights, everything that I do, we lift weights, but we lift weights to mimic what we do on the track. So even if I'm lifting heavy weights, I'm doing it trying to be explosive. I'm doing it, thrusting my hips forward, all the things that I would do on the track. It's just that rehearsal for the main event.
I'm so glad you said all those things, because as sprinting and swimming, the 50 free only came into the Olympics in 1988, so it's relatively late. And swimming coaches and swimmers didn't really understand the event. And even when I swam at the Olympics in 2000, it wasn't coached or trained like it is now to this day. 20 years later, it's really evolved in the last 20 years. And I'm thankful that I've had kind of an impact on that. And there's a lot of coaches out there watching now that are very similar too. But we've had to try and understand that. And that's what track and field really got before we did, was the importance of doing very specific training that would help you become faster on the track for your event. And that's really interesting to me. And I actually got to spend a week with Maurice Green, One of my good friends, John Stephenson, who is an Australian track runner, he took me out to UCLA for a week, and I got to spend some time. And I just watched him, and I'm sure you were the same. Just the specific movements that he was doing every day, the drilling that he was doing to warm up, the way that he was getting his mind ready, his body ready to swim, to run as fast as he possibly could. But everything was very specific, and it was all broken up into segments of the race, like you talked about.
Right. It is. It's very, like you said, I mean, as a coach, you almost have to, every athlete is not the same, regardless of if they're running the same events. So you almost have to tailor a workout to mimic that person's, what they do on the track, or their weaknesses that you can gain. It's like, okay, you need to do this drill because I see that, when you cycle through, you don't cycle through as efficiently as you could. So there may be a drill that you can give that person just to help them. Same in swimming. If you look at somebody's stroke and you figure, okay, your arms could do better, you could swim much faster if you do this. There may be a drill that they can do outside of the pool that mimics that. Because I always say practice, it's rehearsal for the main event. So the more you do it over and over, that repetition is going to make it so that it becomes second nature to you. So when you get in the pool or you get on the track, that's something I don't have to think about. That's going to come second nature now. Now I can focus on something else.
David, I'm going to let you ask the next question, but I'm going to just say this real quick. I was worried about what I could say to you and how it would relate, and I just figured that I could speak for you for the next 8 hours. Like we could talk sprinting forever. I don't know what I was worried about. So
absolutely.
David, go for it.
It all relates.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we should do that sometime.
Seriously.
A few minutes ago, Gail, you were talking about look good, feel good, and obviously that has to do with your psyche and your mental approach. Where you obviously had top-notch training and you were prepared physically leading up to an Olympic Games. Where were you mentally and physically before your race to prepare yourself to run at the highest level and achieve your best?
Mentally, I was always kind of to myself. I'd be in my hotel room. My pastime is solitaire and puzzles. And, I love to read. So that was me getting into myself and blocking everything else out. I do a lot of visualization about my race. I used to even have like my stopwatch. And if it was the hurdles I was running or whatever, I would time my touchdown, set, go, start the watch. And I'm picturing and mimicking in my head me running the hurdle race. And every time I touchdown, I stop. So I'm looking to get my touchdown times under 1.0, each 10-meter segments. And I would do that on the clock. And I'm, just to know, mimicking the starter. Some starters are fast starters, some starters are slow starters. I would get in the hotel room, get against the wall, get down in my starting blocks, and try to, come up and set, and just, at any noise that I hear, it could be somebody walking down the hallway, any noise I heard, I was going to go, because I need to learn how to react off of noise and not anticipate the gun, but react off the gun. So a lot of that kind of stuff, visualization. And then when I'm on the line, I actually said the Lord's Prayer as I was standing on the line, asking him to run with me, for me, place my hands, my feet where they need to be. But mentally, I always felt like I have this guardian angel that rests on my shoulder. And as long as I live my life right, things are going to work out okay. And I just have to stay tough. I know that I put the work in. So that was never an issue of getting to the line saying, oh my gosh. And it was showing up to the line mentally. I always tell people, don't come to a meet. And if someone were to ask you before, like, David, if you ask your athletes, okay, hey, how do you feel like you're going to do? And they're like, well, based off of who's in my event, I think I can place, third. Don't show up. I tell you, don't show up. And people are like, well, why? Because everybody can be a winner by their efforts. Everybody cannot come across the finish line, but everybody can be a winner. So my goal is to step to that line to win. Now, what that means, and my best example, I always tell people, is in 1992, when I was running the 100-meter hurdles and that last hurdle jumped up and got me. I was still a winner, because I did my best and I got across the finish line. So it's about, where is your mental, your mental state? What do you want to do? I'm coming to the line to win. And my winning effort, if I go home and I look myself in the mirror and I can say, did I do everything that I needed to do on that day? And the answer is yes, then I'm a winner. It may not have been the outcome I wanted, but I'm a winner. Because if you negatively beat yourself or browbeat yourself, why show up? So I've got to take something positive out of everything that I've done. It could be the worst practice in the world, and I'm going to find something I did right, and then something that I want to, improve upon.
Oh, I love that. I love that what you just said there at the end too. Take something positive from every practice, no matter what. That's a really good point too.
Yeah, it was really notable when you watch that race. Gail's referring to the race in 1992 where she was favorited to win the 110 hurdles. She was the defending world champion, world record holder, and tripped over that last hurdle and stumbled into the finish line. And she didn't put her head down, didn't get upset, didn't get angry. What you notice is, and I love to pay attention to how people react. I like to watch what people look like when they come out of a ready room or what their reactions are when they finish a race.
Right.
She clapped. She was clapping for the winner. And it just, to me, it just exemplified what your attitude is about the sport itself and your competitive nature, and yet you still had work to do the rest of the meet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I take that. I mean, I look back on that race, and had I won, my goal was win 100 meters, 100-meter hurdles. Had I won, I probably would have retired. So everything happens for a reason. That allowed me to have this long career. But when I looked at, like I said, I stepped to the line wanting to win. I was on world record pace. At that point, I was leading the race by a hurdle. But when I got across the finish line, I stood up. I mean, it's always like, okay, what just happened? And you're, that deer in the headlights. But when I saw up on the scoreboard and they showed who had won, and if you know anything about the Olympic Games for track and field, it started in Greece, but Greece had never won a gold medal in track and field. I don't even think they had won a medal. And so in this race, the girl that won was from Greece. And I mean, how cool is that? I mean, you have to think, it wasn't my time for that, but that allowed me to say, you know what, I'm gonna go back to the drawing board. I'm gonna get back out there and I'm gonna work hard and I'm gonna come back again. And that allowed me to do things not just in the hurdles, but also in the sprints, because they said I was a sprinter and not a hurdler. They said I was a hurdler and not a sprinter.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question too, because I had this as an athlete. I noticed it at times, and then as a coach, I saw it in other athletes. At times, you identify with what people say you are or what you think you are, and at the time, you may have identified as a hurdler more so than a 100 runner, but you end up winning the gold medal in the 100 and missing the medals in the hurdles, and that kind of plagued your career a little bit at the Olympic Games. The same thing happened, the next Olympics as well. You win the 100 again, and you don't win the gold in the hurdles. Is it? And correct me if I'm wrong. But for me, sometimes I identified my identity was a 50-meter freestyler, and then other times I would swim another event and I'd do really well in it, and my 50 freestyle wouldn't be as good. Did you have that at times? You think at the Olympics where you had all this expectation of this is who Gail Devers is, and the expectation to perform in that event, and did it add pressure to that event because you may have identified and relaxed more in the 100?
Well, you know what? I always laugh when people say that because I never read my press. It's just now I don't even have it. My mom, other people are like, oh, I have this article that I found, and people are still sending me things now because I never collected anything when I was running and I didn't read my press. And I always tell people, they're like, why? I said, because if I would have read what they said about me, I probably wouldn't have shown up at a meet. Because it's not what other people believe you can do, it's what you believe you can do and what you're willing to work for. So that was always my mental state. It's like, you know what? I've heard it because I've been in interviews where people say, yeah, you're a hurdler. You think the hurdlers are a jinx for you? And I'm like, no, I think the hurdles are my blessing because everything it doesn't work out the way you guys want them to work out, but I believe in destiny. So it's working out the way it's supposed to. There's not a lot of people who can say they had a 25+ year on top in an event that you guys say is not my event. But if that's not my event, I got in the 100 to work on my speed for the hurdles. And I ran from the 800 on down in high school. So who knows what my event is? I just ran 153 and a half mile, half marathon. So and that was training 3 months. So it doesn't matter what other people say. I look at the blessing of it as in the 100 meters, I'm a sprinter. When I get in the hurdles, I'm a sprinter. I'm always a sprinter. I just happen to have to go over obstacles if it's the hurdles. If I run the 800, I'm a sprinter. I just have to take it 2 laps. If I'm a half marathon, if I'm a swimmer, I'm a sprinter. That's sprinting. It depends. I mean, that's swimming. It just depends on how far I'm going to take that. And the reason I say sprinter is because everybody associates sprinting with being explosive, being powerful, being fast, being, if you win the 100 meters in the Olympic Games, you're given the title of fastest female or fastest male in the world. I want that title in whatever I'm doing. I want to be the fastest 53-year-old. I want to get out there and I want to be explosive. And I want to take what my God-given talent is to the limit. And so I to be honest, I didn't care what other people said. I never even looked when you go and you try to figure out what lane you're in. I used to always ask my manager, who was Greg Foster at that time, just tell me what lane I'm in. I could care less who's next to me. As long as I'm not in the stands, I'm good. And as long as I don't have something in my lane that nobody else has, it really doesn't matter to me. I know everybody's going to bring their A game. I'm going to bring my A+. And so in the hurdles, when it didn't work out the way others deemed that it was supposed to, was always a renegotiating tool for me and myself, because after every race I go back and I debrief myself and say what happened good, what happened bad, what can I go back and change, and that always gave me something. I mean, I could have broken American records and the media was like, well, you don't look excited. I'm like, it's not that I'm excited. I'm trying to figure out where was I? Did I move after 3? Did I do what I was supposed to do so that I can come back and improve upon that? Because if I get to a point and there is nothing left for me to improve upon, it's time to hang up my spikes.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. David, what do you got?
I'm curious about the ready room for both of you. What was it like for each of you in the ready room before your races? You want to start with Brett? What were you like in the ready room, and what did you observe?
Yeah, I'm a little bit like Gail. We didn't have the social media, and the world seems smaller these days, right? I watched Kate Campbell, who is one of the greatest female swimmers in the world right now, Gail, and I watched her do pull-ups in Australia like 2 days ago. And she's at home doing pull-ups, and I'm here in Alabama. So the world is small. You get to see what everybody's doing these days. So it wasn't like that for us back then. So in 2000, when I walked into the ready room for the Olympic semi-final, because I made the top 16 in Sydney, there were 15 of the world's best swimmers in the room with me. I'd never seen some of these guys before. It was the first time I'd actually laid eyes on some of them. So for me, it was definitely, it got the heart rate up, because it was like, finally, wow, there's Peter Van den Hoogenband, there's Alexander Popov, like they're sitting in the room with you. So it's definitely one of those situations where it's uncomfortable, because it's a small room and everybody's waiting to walk out to the final, and you're like, well, what do I do, kind of thing. And so you're trying to be in your own space, but at the same time, you recognize that now you're in a room and everybody's good in that room. I've walked into ready rooms before and it's like, I could beat him, less pressure. You walk into a room and everybody's really good, and the pressure rises. And that's what I noticed the most at Olympic Games is everybody was on their A game. And so like Gail said, you had to be on your A+ game to come out on top of that. What do you think, Gail?
Right. Yeah, well, now what you guys call ready room, we call a call room.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people, last thing you want to be remembered for is, I just made it to the call room.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied? With you got a lot of people who've got a lot of potential, but you can take potential to the grave with you. What are you going to do with that? When you go into the call room, and like you said, it's 15 people there. For us, if it's a semifinal or if it's the final, there's only 8 people.
Yeah.
And that's the 8 best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So mentally, you have to walk in saying, I'm one of the 8 fastest people in the world. How do I separate myself from these people? Like you said, you want to get into your own zone. You can't go in there and get caught up in the fact of, you know what, oh my gosh, everybody's here. Well, you already knew that. That's why you visualize before you get there that I know when I get to the call room and my goal is to get to the final. If I'm not at the final, I'm upset with myself. So my goal is to get to the final, knowing that I'm going to be one of the 8 people in the world that's going to run this race. And with that, that means that it's just like practice. It's just a different event, a different venue. a different place, a different time, maybe a different country, but it's the same thing. Everything that I practice for, now I get to show out. It's that brag moment. And so I want to go and get in my little corner by myself so I can concentrate and not think about them. I don't want to get caught up in somebody else's, because in track and field, it can become mental. People will run past you real fast. And if you look at them, you're like, oh, shoot. You're like, they must really be ready. And maybe they're not. That's warming up out on the warm-up track. And you may not, like you said, half the people you don't really know, because it's, when you get to that Olympic stage or world championship stage, you have not competed against these people maybe every day. Yeah. So you get to a meet and somebody comes past you really, really fast, and you hear the wind like swoosh, and they sound like, oh gosh, they're ready. Yeah. And if you let that mentally get into your head, and that's what why we have to mentor our young athletes, so that they don't allow that to happen. You've already practiced. You're ready for this. I always tell people, when you go to practice, that's like depositing money in the bank. Money in the bank. So when you get to the track meet, now I'm at the track meet or the swim meet or wherever you are, I'm pulling out my black card.
Yeah.
So
that's why she's multiple Olympic champion, by the way. She just gave everybody the answer, And I'll also say this, David, if I'm in the ready room and Gail Devers walks in with those nails and her hair and she's all ripped, I'm like, I'm intimidated, I don't want to race her.
You have to ignore me. You got to ignore me.
Right. But that, I can't help but to think, after hearing you talk and hearing other Olympic champions talk, and I'd just like to hear your perspective on this. When it comes to, let's say, the top, 20 to 50 athletes in the world in the 50 freestyle or the 100-meter dash, would you say it's the physical gifts that differentiate the top one or two in that pack, or is it something mental?
Mental. Because you can have all the God-given talent as far as athletics. Let's look at ketchup bottles. It's just ketchup. Everybody's worked out the same. You can take the top 50, take them to the same coach, and they all have the same basic gifts, and you can work them out. But mentally, if one is tougher than the other, that's the person that's going to win. And it's a hard toss up. You want to have that full equation. You want it to equal 2 + 2 + 2 = 6. And so it's got to be everything. Like they say, mind, body, and soul. It has to be, because you can have your body ready. You can be fit. You talk about being quarantined now. And yes, we all have a whole nother year. What are we doing with that? Are we looking at that saying, oh my gosh, that's going to mess me up. I'm going to be a year older, or I was ready this year. Am I going to be ready next year? Oh, I'm looking at it like, shoot, I got time. I'm 53. I might come back. No, I'm not. But that gives you, more time to get it right, to really concentrate and work on every aspect. Those, like you said, your social media, we're able to watch people as they're training now and doing things. There are some people sitting, some people relaxing. What are they doing? It's the whole concept of mentally, where are you? Everybody at a certain point feels like, oh my gosh, the walls are closing in. What do? Mentally, what do? Do you succumb to that? Or do you find your way out of that? And the mental aspect is those who say, okay, every day I could be training with somebody and they could be, we're even coming out the block. So when I go home, I'm trying to figure out, I don't care if it's just by a fingernail. I'm trying to figure out, how can I beat that person out the blocks tomorrow?
Yeah. Okay. I got you. Yeah.
I don't have any.
You lost your sound, David?
Okay.
I
had lost my sound. Did you guys hear it?
You said I can't hear it. Yeah.
I heard everything Gail was saying. It was amazing. I love it. And let me say this, Gail. I had a very famous coach. He's going to be inducted into the International Swimming Hall of Fame. His name is David Marsh, and I'm sure he's watching this program right now. He actually sent me some questions that he wants me to ask you. And one of the things he would say to us sometimes, and one of the things he did with me, and I've said this to a few people, he came up to me one day and he whispered in my ear. He said, "Change your body language," and I didn't fully understood what he meant. But like, when you look at somebody from the outside in, you can see their energy and you can feel their energy. Where are you right now, Gail, by the way? Are you in Atlanta?
I'm in Atlanta, yes.
Atlanta, yeah. See, I'm in Auburn, Alabama, so I'm about 2 hours drive away. I can still feel your energy from here, you know, like you have an energy, there's no doubt about it. And so somebody to walk into a ready room fully prepared at their best, and you bring that energy in, that's tough to beat, real tough to beat. And that's kind of what I'm sensing from you, is that you just have a natural energy. And I've always believed that, look, you can win an Olympic medal, but you can't win an Olympic gold medal by chance or by luck. That doesn't happen. You know, you got to be special in the sense that you've got to have the full package. And there's no doubt that part of what you're saying is the full package is that mental belief. Because I see a lot of great swimmers who are physically gifted, and they just don't have the energy that you have and that mental belief that you have. So is that something you think that can be developed, though?
Yes, I mean, it's like I said, it's not a cockiness, it's a confidence, and it is in the way you carry yourself. You have to know, I'm not out here busting my tail every day for nothing. I mean, I'm doing it for a purpose. I'm doing it for a reason. If somebody, I always tell people when people say, well, how fast are you? I say, let's go outside. They're like, huh? All right, go outside. Let's look up in the sky. There's no ceiling. So that means that there's no limit to your capabilities, and you have to believe that. And then you have to, and it's not just believing. You can't go to a coach and expect them to have a magic wand. You have to be willing to work. You have to be willing to fall down, but then you also have to be willing to get up. And then when you get up, you want to get up and you want to be better. You brush yourself off. And, you know, sometimes you may feel like I've fallen down so many times. When I get up now, I don't even brush myself off, because that grit and grind keeps me motivated and keeps me wanting to keep going and keep pushing and keep pushing. And so when I get to a race, that's the easy part. I've done so much work, and I've gone, you know, 110% every time. You know, I talk to these athletes in high school, and you get out of it what you put into it. What bothers me, I've got my little ickies that really get to me. It's when I go and I watch kids warming up, and they're going through their drills and they're like half doing it, or they're sloppy doing it. I say, you know what? That's how you're going to compete. And they look at me and I said, you know, even when you're jogging to warm up, and I'll stop them. I'm like, please don't do the mama jog. And I can say that because I'm a mother. That run like there's a purpose, you know, run, even jogging, use your form, drop your shoulders, where's your chin, where are your eyes, you know, because if you practice that way, sloppy, that's how you're going to run, and you're not going to get anything out of it. There's a purpose for a drill. It's not just to warm you up or to give you something to do to kill 30 minutes of time before your coach is ready for your workout. It's so that you properly warm your body up. So if it's track toe, you need to have that toe dorsiflex, all of that in your drills. And it's the little things, those little minute things that you don't think make a difference, they make a big difference. And all of that goes into your mental psyche, because you know that I've done it all. I mean, if I've warmed up and I've done my drills on the side and doing all these kind of things, and I've done it half, and then I get to my workout and coach is yelling that, hey, that doesn't look right. That's not what we asked you to do. Well, I wonder why I can't do it. I can't do it because I've not trained myself to be in that position so that it becomes second nature. I mean, my kids laugh at me now when we go and, you know, maybe there's a new subdivision and we want to look, I like looking at houses. So we'll go and look at houses, and they always have the little barrier where you can't park in the driveway. And it looks like a little mini hurdle, and I'll step over it, but I'll hurdle over it. And they're like, really, mommy? I said, girl, it's been 25 plus years that my body just knows that when I see a barrier, I go over it with my foot cocked, and I bring my trail leg all the way back through to the middle and down. So it's second nature. It's second nature. And that's just conditioning yourself and training yourself to be where you are.
I love it, man. David, I missed a big opportunity not getting Gail to come and talk to my team, man. I wish you had to come and talk to my girls. It's awesome. I love it. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I wish I heard what Gail was saying when the sound.
Your sound is gone completely. Oh,
so good. You can watch the replay.
Yeah, I watched the replay. You know, because I'm a real believer that you know, the human body is capable of so much. You know, there's some people with some gifts that other people don't have. You know, over the years we've seen a few 100,000. You know, kids come through our swim clinics, and you go to Olympic trials, and they're, you know, you see, you know, a couple hundred people even competing in those races, and physically you don't see that much difference between the group, right? But where the big difference is in the head. You know, just it's obvious, whether it's the demeanor, how they walk, you know, their head position when they're you know, even in a warm-up pool or walking out to the blocks, you know, you know, every situation, and that appears to me, and I'm interested in your opinion. Do you think, or with the athletes that you work with, do you work a lot more on the mental aspects of sport as part of the training, like almost put an equal importance on it?
I think you have to, because, you know, that's a part where instead of saying coaching, I'm saying that I'm mentoring and I'm just talking to them. You have to get into their heads to understand where they are. You know, after a practice that they would consider a not good practice, I need to talk to you. And anybody that I work out with, they know, they're like, okay, they can be dead dog tired, but before we leave, we debrief. They come back to me, we circle up, and you tell me, what did I learn today? Was there one thing that, you know what, the light kind of went on with that, or this is what I would like to work on, because then that gives me an idea of where they are head-wise, and I know what I need to work on. You can see it in their faces if they're trying something over and over and over, and it's just not working. You know, they're either near tears or they go off by themselves. Those are the athletes you need to get a hold of right away and calm them down, figure out what's wrong. You know, what are you thinking right now? Why do you think it's not working out the way you want to? How come you can't get your trail leg up, or whatever it is that we're trying to figure out, and let them tell you why, because it could be something that's very minuscule in my opinion, that's not a big deal. Watch this, and you can make that correction, and they're like, oh, I was putting all that into it. I mean, I had some athletes that recently had to run the 400-meter hurdles, and they're like, oh, I can't do this. I said, it's just a race. I've had to do more in practice than you're about to do at this race. It's just you got an audience now. So I don't care. I don't even care where you end up. I just want you to get over the hurdles. You've got 8 hurdles. I need you to get over it. And all of them, I say, you know me, you're going to hear my mouth. I'm going to be around that track. And so when they were done, and they always laugh because they're like, you know, I don't understand how to do this. And I'm usually at practice with boots on, because I'm like, and they're like, you're really going to go over with your Uggs? I'm like, it is not the shoes. It's what's in the shoes. You're fine. You know, and I'll go over a hurdle showing them. And I'm like, it's not that big a deal. Don't think about it. I need you to react and do it. And so at the end of that one race, they all came up to me. They're like, oh, I can breathe. That was not a big deal. I said, see there? I just needed you to get out there. Sometimes you have to put them in situations that are uncomfortable for them, something new, so that when you get them to do what you want them to do, it's like, okay, this is no big deal. I've already been there. I've done this. I always tell them, I said, when you guys get to a race, you're going to be so happy to be at a race because it's just that race instead of all that I'm asking you to do at practice. And they're like, you're right about that. So it's that mental, and you get in their head to figure out something when things go really well or when they're not going as well. Where are they? Talk to them, ask them, what are they thinking before practice, after practice, whatever. And it makes a difference because you can tell what you need to work on to help them be what you know, your whole goal as a coach is to help them accomplish their goals and dreams. And I always make them write it down and write several goals, you know, and then we work off.
You know, it's interesting what you're saying. You know, back in, I think it was like sometime between 2003 and 2007, you know, there was a very big improvement in world records, particularly in swimming. A lot of people say it was because of the swimsuits, which is, you know, because they were wearing the full length suits,
right,
body suits. I think it was because of YouTube, right? So like, the athletes were able to actually see other fast swimmers swim, right? Like back in the day when Popov broke the 50-meter world record, I don't think anyone's ever seen a video of that. It happened, but I don't think anyone ever saw a video of it. But when Eamon Sullivan broke the world record or whatever it did when he's swimming, you know, super fast back in the day, we were able to see video of it the next day, you know, on the other side of the world. And athletes were able to make adjustments and learn from what he did. Oh, that might work for me. Oh, that might not work for me. And that's why I think we saw a lot of improvement at that time. In addition to the suits, what I think is interesting about what's happening now, particularly over the last year or so with, you know, the Olympic Committee addressing more about mental health of athletes. There's a lot of talk about mental health, you know, especially right now with the pandemic. there's a lot of talk about mental health and using visualization and the importance of mental strength. Do you think it's quite possible that after the pandemic, because people learn to harness these powerful tools in our brains that I believe have been underutilized by pretty much everyone, is it possible that the level of performance in both track and field, and this question is for both of you guys, can improve not only at the most elite level of sport, but all the way down through the ranks, because we're going to learn how to harness our mental powers? And that's a real thing, the way you both describe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go for it, Gail.
I think, yes. I mean, like you said, talking about even from the grassroots, you've got these, groups of kids that are young, that are swimmers, and I've seen on, like you said, on some of the social media where people are outside and they're laying on boards trying to work on their swim technique. And in track and field, the same thing. They're outside lifting weights out in the street. So mentally, you've got to figure out. Now, I will say, I think there's a couple different athletes. There is an athlete who, if they have somebody that's holding them accountable, such as their coach, then they survive. If they're held accountable to them, if they make themselves held accountable, some athletes just cannot do that. They can't do that. So this may be that scale that teeters one way or the other when it comes to that. But usually champions, I think everybody has what it takes in them to be a champion. It's just that sometimes you have to reach a little deeper. Sometimes it's surface level and it's always going to stay on the surface and you can just call it out when you need it. But during, like you said, pandemics, things like this, when things are not the norm, when you have to find your new set of normal. And some people don't relate very well to finding a new set of normal because it's so different for them. They don't want to embrace that. And they succumb to that. So there will be some, it's like I heard something years ago, and I like to use the analogy where if your dreams could come true, if you just had to get to the door, everybody would bum rush the door. But if the room filled with water, some of us can swim, some of us cannot swim. So some of us would be like, oh, I can't do it. And then some would say, okay, I'm still going to figure out, how to make it through. If it got dark and the lights went off, every circumstance that got in your way as a block, are you going to burst through that or find a way through that? It's like people say, oh, you got to think out the box. I'm not trying to be in the box at all. I don't want to be in that box. I always want to find my own way. So I think if we use it on the positive side and people really harness, like you said, harness that mental energy that we all have, and we just have to figure out a new way to get it done. I mean, I saw a commercial, which I thought was hilarious. It's Lowe's commercial, and they're talking about how, your table now has become your office. And I guess he was taking the little toddler to the bathroom that became the break room, and he was on his phone. And there was a gentleman who was lifting weights, and he had used like the big paint buckets and put the quick cement in it, and he was actually lifting weights with that. He found a new way to get the same thing done, and you can do that. Like you showed us your guns, Brett, talking about what you're doing at home. You're still getting it done. It's just a different arena. It's no different than, and I think that's a positive, because when you talked about going to the ready room and you see all these people that maybe you haven't seen before. Okay, so now, you know what? This is a different event, same event, different venue, but I'm doing the same thing. I'm getting the work done. I'm still giving my A+. I'm just finding new ways of getting it done. And I think that these athletes now, and there's so much going on talking about, togetherness and that we can get this done. And I think when we have something that's tragic that happens, we come out as Americans and as the world better on the other side of it anyway, just because that's the nature of being human. And so I think that that's where we'll be when we come out on the other side. So I'm expecting to see great times, great performances, like you said, in the pool, out of the pool, and just in life, people setting these goals and setting high standards for themselves and then working to achieve them, because now they know they can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I want to ask you something different. Body image is something that young girls have to deal with. And then as they go into college, I had to deal sometimes with girls that didn't want to change their body composition too much because they felt like it just didn't, it didn't feel natural to them or whatever. When I look at you at the Olympic Games, I see beauty. I mean, you're strong and powerful, very, very beautiful. And then obviously you're able to then put that into the performance as well, and it was necessary in order to compete at that level. How did that shift for you from being a teenage girl into being a woman and lifting weights and gaining strength and gaining power, and then still having that beautiful self-image of yourself? You know what I mean?
Right. Like you say, yeah. And dealing with female athletes, that is a different thing, because it's about image, and it's about what, they look like, but it's how you perceive yourself. For me as an athlete, I want to be the best athlete that I can be. And now I didn't start lifting weights until I got to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was totally different for me. But I always tell people I had a little straight boy shape anyway, so I'm good. So it's about, what do I need to do? And if this is the goal, my ultimate goal is to get to the Olympic Games and to perform well. And in order to get there, I need to lift weights. I need to do this. And if you know that and you sign on for that, which is why I always tell people to write your goals down and sign it. I'm going to sign it on a signature line saying, I, Gail Devers, am committed to doing what I have to do to accomplish my goals. So lifting weights to me only makes you beautiful. If I decide that I want to lift weights and that's what's going to help me, the muscles, I'm not lifting to be bulky. Now I probably will bulk up anyway, just because that's just my physique. But the goal is to get strength and power and explosiveness. And so, I think it's better now than it was back in the day, because back in the day, you were like, oh, you look like a man. That was what people perceived. I've always had big calves, so it was like, oh, look at her legs. I'm like, that's just what it is. And so I think it's a little better now, because now, when I was in high school, I used to wear long white socks, thinking I was covering up my calves so people couldn't see them, not knowing I was really accentuating them. And now it's a little different, because people are like, oh my gosh, how can I get my legs to look like yours? So I think the image of lifting weights and being fit and trim, people are trying to do. And I always say, it's not about, I say it all the time in everything. It's not what other people believe about you, or what they, they talk about body shaming or whatever. It's not how other people see you. It's how you see yourself. And no matter what I do, I know God created me. I always tease people, because they ask me, well, how tall are you? And I always tell people, I'm 6'4". They're like, are you 6'4", 44 Ds? Absolutely. And then when they see me, they're like, okay. But it's it's how I see myself. And I always tell people, go and look at yourself in the mirror. If you're pleased with how you look when you take your clothes off, then you are fine. If there's something you want to work on it, work on it. Nobody else can tell you, other than like if you're in athletics and your coach is saying, I need you to lift weights. As a swimmer, you're not going to lift for bulk. You're not trying to be a weight lifter. So everything that you're doing, you have to explain that to them. What you're doing is making you powerful and strong for your event, not to go out there and see if you can squat 800 pounds, because what is the purpose of that? That doesn't relate to your event. So as long as you keep it in perspective, and they've signed up on that dotted line to do what they need to do to be the best, I think they won't have a problem with it. And you just keep reiterating, oh, I love it. I see your quad. I see the muscles. I see, swimmers are going to have, they've got the broader shoulders. I think tell them it looks really cute and sexy when they put their clothes on.
Yeah, I agree. David, what do you got?
We talk a lot about the positive attitude, and we talked about the stumble at the Olympics. Has there ever been in your career an obstacle that you really did struggle with that took a little bit more strength than, the second thing down on the list?
My illness. I have Graves' disease, and I came very close to having my feet amputated. I think that was one of the toughest things I struggled with. And just because I went from being an athlete, being on top of my game. And I always tell people that my analogy is like being on top of a mountain and somebody takes the mountain away and you just drop. And how do you build yourself back up from that? And where do you go? There's always that question in your mind is, I told people I always just wanted to catch up to the old Gail. I left for 3 years and I was running this particular time. And now I want to catch up to her. And then I want to catch up to her, and then I want to pass her. So it was a big struggle of how do I do that? Mentally, physically, everything. How do I get back to where I was and then be better than that, and utilize what I went through as like my sounding board, and utilize what I went through as a motivation that I can do this. And so that was probably one of the toughest things that I went through. And I think going through that and being at the bottom and, you know, bringing myself back up to the top, let me know that, you know, I always tell people the word no is not in my vocabulary until I had kids. Then it's no, you can't go there. No, you can't do this. But before that, in athletics, there is no. It's about how do I make this situation into a yes? How do I move past that? And I can say I draw back on that a lot, dealing with, like I said, I've lost my brother. You know, we were only 14 months apart. So all the other things that have happened in my life where you feel like those walls are closing in on you, I draw back to, you know, I've been, as they say, in a box, and I don't like being in a box, and I'll never go back in a box. So before I think somebody's trying to put me in, if I still see daylight, I see 1 foot that's still not in there, I'm going to kick and scream to get out of that box and keep moving forward to get back in control of my life.
So during that time, was there anyone that you particularly needed to lean on, or that you sought out to help you through that time? Was it, you know, because you sound like such a strong woman, right? And you're and capable of so much. Did you have to go out of your comfort zone in terms of just asking for help? You know, because you were struggling with it a little bit.
My family has always been, you know, my reassurance, you know, and because those who knew, like, you have friends, but the way my body changed so much that anyone that I hadn't seen in a while, when they saw me during those times, you know, they were like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Because I had lost so much weight, and they're like, oh, are you anorexic? Are you on drugs? And you could even, sometimes people would say it out loud, and sometimes they'd have that question mark in their head where you know what they're thinking. And you felt like, oh my gosh, you know, and so I stopped going out. I was raised in church from a very young age that, you know, you just trust and believe. You may not understand the whys, and so I don't ask why. It's just that everything that comes about, nothing's easy, you know, like they say, anything worth having is worth working for. But oh my gosh, going through that, you know, it's just leaning on, like I said, my brother, which was hard that I lost my brother at such a young age, because I remember the last thing right before dealing with my feet, my brother was the one who took me into the hospital. And, you know, being carried around, my parents, you know, carrying me around to the restroom because I couldn't walk on my feet anymore. So we were always very close knit, you know, and since then I've, you know, invited other people into my fold as far as this tight knit family circle that they kind of understand me. They're like, Gail, that's just Gail. She's just on her own program. And I'm going to go and to myself. I think, like I said, it wasn't easy. You know, there were times where if I could have crawled up into a hole, I mean, I was in my house, did not come out of my house. I covered all my mirrors up because I couldn't stand the way I looked, didn't understand it. I was going to the doctors. The doctors were telling me, oh, no, there's nothing wrong. You know, maybe you just, you know, train too hard. You peak too many times. I'm like, nah. And you start believing that. I'm like, I had lost so much weight that I stopped getting on the scale. So there was that, what I call no answer Annie, because nobody gave me answers. And I didn't understand. I'm like, am I a washed up athlete? If so, then I need to write my resignation letter, give it to my coach, and then move on and figure out what else I need to do. And I was very fortunate that my coach at that time was Bob Kersey, and he wouldn't take it. He wouldn't take and I really I had written out a letter saying, you know, you've got all these great athletes out here, and I don't want to waste your time, you know, when I don't know what, you know, a couple months ago I was running very well, and now I'm at the bottom and I can't even understand. I'm running slower than I've run from the first time that I stepped on a track. There's something wrong. So definitely there were those times where you feel like, you know, for lack of a better analogy, I was in the closet, you know, a dark closet, and not wanting to come out because what was I coming out to? Nobody had any answers, and you're telling me that this is my life now, that either I'm making all this up in my head. And I think it was just one day that I said, I could be making up the way I feel talking to doctors, but I looked myself in the mirror, my eyes were bulging, I had a goiter. I'm not making up the way I look anymore. There's something wrong. And I think that was the turning point for me that said, you know what, I'm going to be an advocate for myself. And if you're not giving me the answer, I'm going to go to the next person. I'm going to go to the next person. I'm going to keep going until somebody tells me that it's not me, because it can't be me. I'm very detailed as far as the goals that I set for myself and how regimented I am in doing that. And this just doesn't fit into my equation. So somebody's got to help me. And that day that I met Dr. Ginsburg changed my life.
Thank God for that. And they ended up putting you on some medication for your thyroid, right?
Yes, I take Synthroid, and it's like, I went through radiation treatment to ablate my thyroid, so I don't have a thyroid. So you have to have a thyroid to live. So I take synthetic thyroid to make my body think that it has one, and it operates in that manner. So yes.
Wow, interesting. Wow, crazy story.
Is it easier to diagnose Graves' disease now than it was back then?
I believe so. I mean, we've done a lot of, campaigns trying to get there. There's over 2 million Americans who still don't know, though. So and I think because the symptoms, how often do you hear somebody saying, oh my gosh, I've gained weight or I've lost weight, or, I'm really sleepy, or and there's no explanation for it. You can say ourselves, oh, it's because it was the holidays and I was eating too much, or I went on some crazy whatever. And it's not until you couple those things together. And I think the irritating part for me was when it came down to it, that it was a very simple blood test that could have determined it. Call a thyroid stimulating hormone test. Your thyroid influences every organ and cell in your body. And if it stops working, so will your body. So you got athletes who are saying, my body's just not responding the way I want to. I'm, lethargic, I'm this or that. You ask them a couple different scenarios and send them to their regular doctor and say, ask for a TSH test. And a lot of them have come back that, no, that wasn't it, but that did trigger me to think of something else as far as the doctor. I think a lot of times when we go into our doctor, we see our doctor once or twice a year. But your body and some of the things that you're feeling. I always tell people, write it down. I'm writing down that this month I was feeling like this, and then it got better, or it didn't get better, or I changed it. So when you go into the doctor, you can tell them everything that you're feeling so that they can make a proper diagnosis, so that you don't have to be that one that was 3 years of living in limbo, which is where I was.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't remember if it was you or Gary Hall Jr. or someone, but they were talking about the importance of when you go to a doctor to, like you said, write down what you're feeling and so you can communicate it well. And they kind of made the analogy of like when you go to a mechanic and you bring your car in,
and nothing's going on. No, that beep, that bump stops bumping. Exactly.
Right. You know exactly what's going on with the car, and you're so explicit with the mechanic. But so many people go into the doctor and they're like, "Yeah, I've been feeling pretty good," whatever, and they're almost like nonchalant about it. And it's important because that's how you can identify, ailments. That's a super important thing.
I got a question, Gail, about back to the track again. Okay, so what was the one race where you felt like you were running faster than you've ever run before, and how did you get that performance?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know what? To be honest, when I've run my fastest races, they didn't feel fast. It felt, to me, it just felt like it was like I wasn't putting the effort in. It was like I was just kind of floating, like it just happened.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I wasn't like I wasn't straining.
You're not gritting your teeth.
Nice and relaxed. Yeah. And it's the weirdest feeling because it's kind of like an out of body experience, and it's like it just carries you. And I think that's why I say that you really have to put that work in before. So when you get to the track, you've already done that. I mean, now I'm just executing and really just trying to execute. I will say the only thing that I do always remember in my races, or most of my races, is when I got to like 80 meters, remembering to put what I call my 8 hit. You guys have 4 hits. I have an 8 hit. Getting my 8 hit forward and just staying in that position so that I can just finish. And so I don't ever remember like those hard races. The hard races are usually my slower races. It's like, really? Okay. I was working way too hard for that. I'm like, and I'll run a fast race, and which is why you look up at the clock and you're like, oh, wow, okay, because that felt like I was just comfortable, like I was just doing what I've been doing in practice.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because it's exactly the same thing in swimming, right? When you try too hard, you're just beating the water up, you're just hammering against the water. And the best swims that I ever had were the ones that I can't remember. I swam my fastest time in the semifinal of the Olympic Games in Athens, and I can't remember a single stroke. I just remember the gun going off and then me being at the wall and thinking, what just happened? Like it was the easiest swim of all time, you know. And I took something from track and field. Tell me if I'm wrong, but you know, when you see the fastest runners in the world these days, you know, their cheeks are relaxed. You know, if you see them in slow motion, you see that their cheeks are doing this as they're running. And you know, they're not gritting their teeth and they're not, you know, clenching their face. And so I can't see my swimmers in the pool. Obviously, they've got their head down, they're not breathing. So I always used to say to them, relax your face when you're swimming fast. Because if your face is relaxed, then your whole body's relaxed. And you're able to then get into that just freedom of power and freedom of speed. Is that something that you consciously worked on in track and field or not?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you'll notice like in track and field, they may have 3 or 4 rounds that they have to go through. And you'll notice in like a prelim or quarter or semifinal, well, maybe not so much in, let's say the first 2 rounds, everybody is relaxed, you know, and they look good and they're running fast times. And then you wonder when they get to the final, why they could not duplicate that because they let the pressure get to them. And they're like, okay, this is a final. I got to put that extra oomph into it. And they do it and they come out and they do something and they're tense. And then you try to relax in the race and the race is not long enough to be doing all of that. And I always tell you what gets you there keeps you there. And what got you there was being relaxed and acting like this was practice. And so in the final, you need to do the same thing. You need to blast out the blocks because you do it in practice. You know, that's why I say you have to practice like it's the main event. If I practice and I haphazardly just come out of the blocks, however, I'm going to do that in a race. But if I practice, okay, today is my 95% day. I got to get out. I got to move. I got to get out and move. And then I got to move again. And I do that constantly, that when I'm in the race, or let's say now it's the prelims, I'm only running maybe the first, I'm only looking for, if I've broken my race up into 3 phases, right now I'm only looking to go through phase 1 and phase 2. I'm just going to do it just like practice. Now it's relaxed. Now in the final, I've saved it. Now in the final, I'm going to do phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. It is no different. There's no, you know, and it's a hard thing to say because how do you tell somebody, don't let the pressure get to you? You know, it's the same thing. Well, they know in the back of their minds that, yeah, it's a different stage. You know, this is the Olympic Games. I've got 1 shot and 4 years later, nothing's guaranteed. But if you practice for it, then you're ready for it. And now you just get out there and execute. That's why I always tell people it's about brag moments. This is your brag moment. I tell kids that, you know, when I go to schools and they have a test, I'm like, it's not a test. It's a brag moment. Then you study. They're like, yeah. I said, okay, so go out there and show me what you got. They're like, okay. All we ask you to do. And my kids will tell you to this day, because I've been telling them this since they were born. I said, what does mommy ask you to do? Always do my best. That's all I ask, because I can't ask for anything more. And if you do your best, I know you're going to be fine. It doesn't matter what other people think you should do. You just get out there and do your best. And so that kind of takes the pressure. And even though, you know, my daughter now has just started running and playing football and lacrosse. And so this was her 9th grade year. And I said, you know, it's a different thing for you. So, but when you get out there, and I send her texts all the time, I said, just relax and breathe. This is your time to breathe. Exhale and go. And that's what she does. And that kind of gets her through it. She said, okay, that worked. Cause you know, I was thinking that I was going to be really nervous, but when I got the baton, I just took off. I said, that's all you can do. You practiced it, you know? And so that's kind of what we have to do for our athletes. Just tell them to exhale and just let it go. Yeah.
Well, thank you. You just summarized my Olympic experience, exactly why I didn't win the Olympic gold medal. It's not that I didn't want it, so I wanted it. You just want it a little bit more. It's like you want it, and you're just kind of just tense a little bit. It's fractional, you know. It's like, and then at the end,
it's crazy how that one thing will make a difference. Is that?
Yeah. Like, why did I? Oh, you just try a little bit too hard, you know, because you know this is it, you know. So anyway.
Yeah.
What were you going to
say? Quick question. In swimming, athletes have a taper before a big meet. In track and field, let's say before the Olympics, did you change your training at all? And how far out would you do that?
It's like you said, it's a taper down, you know, because you can't keep running, you know, all these fast times in practice and then think that you're going to sustain it, because you do have rounds, you know, so you're looking at maybe, you know, 2 weeks before that you're starting to taper a little bit down, just so you're still working out, but you're tapering a little bit, that maybe your percentage is not as high, or you'll have that one time, or your reps aren't as high. Let's say if you were doing 4 or 5 150s at 95%, it may be you come to practice and you do 1 or 2 and go home. because I know where you are. I'm just trying to keep you sharp now. Once I know that you're ready, we just want to keep you sharp so that you go through the rounds and you want to hit your peak on that final day. And then all I have to do is just keep you calm and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been going for a while, and we could, like I said, we could go for 4 or 5 hours here. But, you know, I know that everybody's got their own limits. So look, why don't we open up the chat real quick and see if anybody out there has any questions for us. The chat will just kind of load up real quick here, and hopefully we can get people online. Gail, if you go over to the chat section, you should be able to click it and see some questions come up. And if I'll specifically look for them to see what kind of questions.
Chat. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Do I click it, you said?
Yeah, just click on that, and you should see some questions appear. And I'll see what we got for the audience out there. If anyone's got a question for Gail, please feel free to log in.
Hi, hello.
Yeah.
What exactly is Graves' disease? Okay, I
yeah.
see. What exactly is Graves' disease?
Mm-hmm.
Graves' disease is a disease of your thyroid gland. It's a butterfly-shaped gland that rests in the base of your neck. Like I said, it influences every cell, organ, and tissue in your body. And it's like your engine. Your engine can't run if it's not working. And so you have to keep it where it's supposed to be. And I take medication every day, small pill for the rest of my life in order to be me.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question that popped up, and I'll just ask it a different way.
Jasmine.
Oh, you got some of your students on there as well?
Yeah, I see them.
Nice.
Yes.
How do you improve reaction time in track and field? How do you work on reaction time? Did we lose Gail? Just lost her. Uh-oh. She should be able to click back on here. You seen some questions pop up, David?
Well, I could answer about the reaction time, but you don't want to hear it.
I think Gail clicked herself off accidentally, so hopefully she can click back in, because I don't have any answers for track and field.
Yeah, well, this question here is quite interesting. What recommendations that Gail may have, and Brett, maybe you want to handle that right now, on how to address the epidemic of anxiety with kids whose parents. How do you handle it? How do you handle anxiety for kids?
And their parents' expectations type thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough balance. I actually, when I was younger, my mom used to get so nervous and so stressed before races that I actually told her to stay home a couple of occasions. And it was very hard for her to hear that from her son. Like, you know, I'm taking you to practice. I'm paying the bills. I'm feeding you. Like, I'm not going to stay home. Like, but I just said, Mom, like, I just want you to understand that sometimes your nervous energy spills out into me, and I can feel that on the deck. So could you just, for this occasion, either come to the pool and sit away from where I can see you, or don't come to the pool at all. Just give me some space if you can't handle your own emotions. And that was a tough conversation I had to have. But it kind of helped us understand each other a little bit better and what I needed from my performances. Now, that wasn't as a 10-year-old. I'm talking more of like 15, 16, 17 when we had those conversations. But certainly I could feel the pressure, from my mother. And she just didn't understand swimming. So she didn't. Gail's back now, so welcome back.
I'm back. I don't know what happened.
This is a good question for Gail. I'm losing. I can't. The Jimmy Orr had an interesting question. I'm losing it on my screen though.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the essence of his question was, what was it like training with other athletes who were as competitive as you, had similar potential perhaps? You know, what was that? Was that a difficult thing? What was that like?
I think it was the best. I mean, I think our training camp, you had tons of gold medals right there. I trained with Florence. I trained with Jackie Joyner-Kersee. Al Joyner was out there, Kenny Harrison, Valerie Briscoe. I mean, everybody. And
Wow.
So it was one of those things that, I used to try to get in the blocks with Greg Foster when we were doing block starts, because my goal was, even though he was running the 110 hurdles and I was running the 100 hurdles, my goal was not to let him beat me to the first hurdle. And so it really worked. And then when we do distance, it was, about having this group. And if I could keep up with this group, anytime I stepped on the track, going to a track meet, there wasn't that concern of where do I need to be. A lot of people like to train by themselves or, wait till they get to a meet, but then what's going to happen when you show up, you're not sure who's going to show up. I wanted the same Gail to show up every single time, and being in an atmosphere where you had to bring your A+ game, even in practice, but you had to, I think there was so much out there that we also had to be regimented as far as, if this is an 85% day, I don't need you going 86%. I need you to go 85 because injuries could arise when it comes to that. But it worked out. I mean, it worked out, and I thought it was a great atmosphere to get you where you needed to be. And if you're training with the best in the world, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
When you get to a meet, you're ready.
One of my good friends here that I was from college with, Lionel Moreau, he's in France right now. He had a question for you. He said, "What's your most memorable moment?"
My most memorable moment in track and field.
Yeah.
You know what? I would have to say winning my first gold medal. And it's because I had come back from my Graves' disease. A lot of people are like, oh, you won gold medals and then you got sick. No, I got sick. I was on my way and I got sick. And then, like I said, from being on the bottom and being able to come back, I remember taking my victory lap, and there was the guy with the big NBC camera, and he was following me around the track, and he was like, slow down, you got to savor the moment. And I remember telling him, you better come on because you don't know what I've been through. And that was, for me, because I remember crawling and wondering if I'll ever walk again. And now here I am winning a gold medal for myself and for my country. And there is no greater feeling.
So when you look at those 3 gold medals, that first one really means something to you then, huh?
It does. It means something because that was something that I had set as a goal of mine. And then because it took them almost 3 years to figure it out, I took that sticky note and I had to put it up. And then as I was coming back, I had, it was dusty after 3 years, but I had to dust it off and re-sign it and say, you know what, I got to get back on it. But I remember, like we were talking about being quarantined now, I remember being in my house, and I couldn't go out because I couldn't put shoes on yet because my feet were still big and bloody. And I remember back in the day, anybody that's young, you guys don't know this, but we had telephone books that had every yellow pages and white pages that had everybody's, name and number. And it was about this thick. And I used to sit there and try to put those on my hamstrings, and I was doing hamstring curls with that and finding whatever I could to get some type of workout in so that when I was able to go back outside, I'd be ready.
That's great. That's great. One question that popped up here, and I believe Dave Marsh also sent this question. Did you ever have plateaus in your career? A question popped up here asking, hey, I'm a young athlete, and I haven't improved in 2 years. Do you have any advice to address plateaus?
Well, you got to change up what you're doing too, because in everything, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same results. And so there has to be, that's why you have peak training schedules where, let's say, and I'll just make up something, 6 weeks, a 6-week period of time where you're doing something, your body becomes comfortable and it becomes familiar with that. So you have to, that's why cross training is awesome. You cross train, still getting the same effect, but you want to keep, you want to keep climbing to the summit. I don't want to get to, level 8 and there are 13 stages and I can only get to 8 and I can't figure out why. Well, I've got to back it off and figure out something else to do. It's in your training. And I always say that you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same results. On the negative side of that is finding something.
Interrupted on that. I just have a quick question about that. So it's kind of easy to say if you're comfortable with change, right? And you're headstrong and you might be more mature and older and successful. But let's suppose I'm a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, right? And I had some success when I was younger, and I haven't run much faster in 2 years, and I've got a coach. What can you change if you have the same coach and things like that? How can you adjust to that?
Well, sometimes when you talk about younger athletes, you also have to figure out their bodies are still developing.
Yeah.
And so where are they, we'll talk about females, girls in particular, their bodies are going to be changing. So what they were able to do at 12 and 13, now their bodies have matured a little bit. And so the coach has to be able to make those adjustments. I don't expect the child to make it, but the coach has to be able to look at them and say, okay, we were running really well here and you were able to, and I will also say, for all my sprinters, all of them, and Jasmine, I'm gonna put you on blast. All of you guys out there, don't be afraid to do the distance. If you've got to be able to do distance. As a young child, you're talking about young athletes, and they get out there and they say, okay, I'm a sprinter, so all I'm going to do is sprint. But I'm going to get to a point and I don't have anything. I want to be a prototype. They ask, if the fastest car has 6 gears, I want 7. How do I get that? I've got to do distance. And my example is that when I ran, I truly only ran the 100 meters, whether it be the hurdles or the 100. And so I knew that there were people who were running the 400 and the 200, and so they were probably in comparison stronger than me. So I needed to train like I was a 400-meter runner. So I wasn't afraid to get out there and do 400-meter workouts. Now, I didn't want to get out there and run the 400 in a meet, but I wasn't afraid to do the 500s and the 600s, because that's going to give me that extra energy, extra explosiveness, extra endurance, so that when somebody came up on the side of me, I'm going to be able to move. I get to shift my gear just like they shifted their gears, and they thought, okay, she only runs the 100. We're going to catch her. Not quite. Everybody decelerates. It's just who's going to decelerate the slowest. And I hope to decelerate the slowest at that point, because you can only hold your top speed for so long. And so as an athlete, I would say, look at that first of all. If you're at a point and you're a sprinter or whatever, and you're like, I was running faster 2 years ago, and now I'm not really improving. Well, have you put in any distance? Are you doing that over distance work to get you that extra gear? So that's one thing that you can look at.
Yeah, I saw a question here, Gail. And by the way, I ran track in high school. I ran the 800, and it felt like child abuse. It hurt. It hurt me physically to the core, like the bone. I could swim a distance, over distance. That track feeling, man, it hurt. You guys go through some pain.
I mean, it's not for everyone. I will say it is not for everyone, but even in swimming, if you were to get out there, and you're not trying to be an Olympian, but if you get out there and you do some jogging and you do something, that's going to help your endurance. And then when you get in the pool, you've got that cardiovascular, you know what I'm saying? So it's not that we're going to put you in a race, don't tell David to sign you up for anything, but it's going to help you improve. And even mentally, if you ran it, you know that you've got that in you. And a lot of it, because it's mental, it's like, okay, it felt like child abuse, but it really is not. It made you a stronger person mentally and physically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I love my time in track and field. But listen, you seem to have a positive attitude most of the time. How did you deal with teammates that had negative attitudes a lot?
I ignored them. No, I did. I mean, you can't, I'm that person that I don't want negativity to invade my space. So I'm going to find something positive in the worst situations. People are like, really, Gail? I'm like, yes. They're like, but that's me. And it works for me. And I think because negativity only breeds negativity. And if I get caught up in your negative attitude, that's going to affect me. And so I feel like I've got this suit of armor that's around me, that's keeping me protected. And so I can't let you get into my mix. So I'm just going to ignore you. When my youngest daughter, Legacy, when she was little, she used to have this saying, she's like, talk to the hand because the face ain't home, leave a message at the tone, beep. So that's basically what I do to a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sorry, a question there from LaShawn Hicks said, can you still sing?
LaShawn, San Diego.
You still
sing? Can I still what?
Sing.
I don't sing. I sing in the shower, girl. No. I sing in the shower. I sing to my dogs. I sing with my kids.
That's good.
I don't ever consider myself a singer, but she remembers me from back in the day singing in the choir at Mount Airy.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, I'm glad they're joining us. A good mix of swimmers and track and field athletes. It's cool. So, all right, David, you got anything else there?
That's it. What a conversation. I appreciate you coming on, Gail. Thank you so much. And
no, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think there's a lot to talk about, related to athletic performance, and we'd love to do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see a question from Megan. She said, when did I start running? Yeah. I did not start running until I was 15. My sophomore year in high school, which I guess people are like, oh, that's late. And so my daughter, Carson, decided she was going to start when she's 14. So she beat me. But I started at that age, and, track and field was basically free. You just had to have shoes. So I started running that and went on from there.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. We had a
Trying to find
comment
another
here.
question.
Somebody said thank you for having a female superstar on, and we really appreciate you being here. Next week we actually have Jenny Thompson coming on the show, and she is one of the greatest.
Jenny, that's my girl.
Yeah, that's it. One of the greatest female swimmers in history. So she's going to be on here next week too. So a lot of good things. But we really appreciate your time. This has been such a great moment for me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, I want to say thank you to you guys, and thank you to everyone that tuned in. And we'll have to do this again because this was actually fun. Now that I'm not tech savvy, so I just figured all this out. So this was actually pretty cool for me, and I would love to do it again.
Yeah,
and you guys stay safe. Yeah. Everybody stay safe. You know, get your masks. I made tons of masks. Me and my girls, that's what we do.
Bye, guys.
So stay safe and just mentally tough.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks, Gail. Appreciate it. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, guys.